Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast. Our primary objective is to motivate and inspire our listeners to never quit. The reality of life is simple. We all fall. We all fail. At times, we get knocked down. The question is, do we get back up? Are we stronger? Are we better prepared to attain the maximum of our potential? Thank you for joining our No Quit tribe. As you go for your greatness today, never quit. And remember, we rise by lifting others up. Welcome to episode number 383 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is hard work pays off. Our quote of the day comes to us from Kevin Hart. At the end of the day, you put all the work in, and eventually it'll pay off. It could be in a year, it could be in 30 years. Eventually, your hard work will pay off. For those of you that have grabbed one of our t-shirts or sweatshirts, we can't thank you enough for your support and helping us spread our message. If you are interested, you can head on over to positivitytribemerch.com. Once again, that is positivitytribemerch.com. It is an honor to welcome back today's guest for his second appearance on our podcast. Lew Caralla has had some of his incredible motivational videos go viral, and I know you will truly enjoy what he has to share. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Lew, I'd like to welcome you back to the No Quit Living podcast.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. Really looking forward to it and appreciate it.
Appreciate you being here. I know you have a bunch going on. So one of the reasons that I did want to connect with you, and we briefly spoke offline as well as phone and text messages, but you were recently let go a couple months back from your job, and you handled that with such grace and positivity into this new transition. And I was just curious, how were you able to deal with that, all that came with that? You have a family, wife, kids, with such a positive mindset.
You know, I felt like it was out of my hands, and I knew deep in my heart that I could not have done anything different or anything better, or have given more of my heart or effort or sweat or anything to those kids. And if it wasn't enough for a guy that just wanted to do it just to do it, how can I stop that? And that's what gave me peace, because I would not have changed anything. And I do not have any regrets. And I love those players. And I really tried to pour into their life daily. And, you know, it's almost laughable that you can get let go for that, but that's how it is. And I do know what I signed up for, and I know that's how brutal it can be. And it doesn't make it any easier. You know, I had my down days and I had my tough times with my family and wondering why certain people didn't get let go and certain people did. And the reality of it is, I just was not meant to be there anymore.
I think we could almost end the podcast right there, just from the perspective of what you shared. And I think it goes back to anything in life when you, in essence, empty your tank with your effort, with your energy, with your attitude. Obviously, that didn't make it easier, and you didn't just, leave that meeting or that conversation with a smile on your face saying this is great. But I think the reality is, when you pour into others the way in which you do, and when you literally empty your tank and know that, to quote you, there was nothing else you could do or nothing more you could do, I think that allows people to transition. But so many people still do it with that chip on their shoulder and that woe was me and why me, but you didn't. And we briefly touched before we jumped on here. I think so many people share the absolute best of the best on social media. It's their highlight reel. It's that game-winning shot, that big deal, that car, that house. And that's all fine and good, but I think the whole premise behind our company and our podcast, No Quit Living, it's the story behind that. And I don't want to knock anybody that's achieved success and they've attained some level of success, whether that's monetary, physical, different things. But to me, it's always what goes on behind the scenes. And I guess the follow-up question kind of to that is, once you were let go, obviously there were conversations with your wife and kids and things like that, but what is it that you were doing on a day-by-day basis to really maintain that positive attitude and mindset, and just knowing that, you had more things that were coming down the road?
So I've always said to myself, my dad's always told me that hard work pays off and no one tells you when. And, sometimes you're not going to get what you're praying for right away. Sometimes you're not going to get exactly what you dreamed of. And, being at Georgia Tech for 4 years was a dream of mine. It was a, close proximity to home. I was in a Power Five school. I got to do everything I dreamed of in a program. I got to be myself. And when I was let go, did I feel like that was fair? No, not at all. Did I feel great? Did I shake the guy's hand at the end? No, I didn't. But at the end of the day, I knew that something better would be waiting for me, because there's just a feeling you have in your heart that, how are you this honest? How are you doing this much work behind people's back? How are you never talking bad about things? How are you always trying to do the right thing, and the right thing doesn't happen to you? That doesn't make sense to me. So I always believe that when you are truly a genuine person and you really care and you really try to do it the right way, I do believe the right things are waiting for you. And this situation here, yeah, people might say on paper it looks like a step down. I look at it as a blessing way up, because there's a man who believes in what I am and who I am, and his belief in me allows me to continue to be myself and lead 120 men on a daily basis, where we're going nuts every day. And everything I'm doing here is everything I've always believed. And that's why that hard work pays off. No one tells you when, because, man, I'm telling you, that when can mess with people.
You bring up a really interesting point in regards to the step down perspective. And I think, especially in college athletics, we look at who's on TV and who is playing in the bigger conferences, and whether that's ESPN, the best time being on television, those type of things. But I think the thing that you said really stood out is the ability to work with those players each and every day. And I have the luxury of working with some Division III, II, and I teams from the mental performance side. And to me, it's not obviously just where you are in that division or that conference. It's more along the lines of really feeling valued and like you're listened to and heard. But it goes back to the first thing that you said, which is, really pouring into those guys and knowing that you couldn't do more, which leads me to my next question. We briefly touched on this when you were on here the first time, but you posted a video. I'm not even sure exactly when it was. I know the video about being lazy and working hard, and that video went viral, and so many people reshared it. I still see it all over Reels and stuff on Instagram. What led you to begin posting and sharing that type of content out there?
Well, that video was actually shared by Georgia Tech at first. So people started taking it from them. And then I'm like, well, I might as well post it too and have it on my page eventually. And no, but COVID really started my posting of videos. I would always, tweet like a motivational quote or something every week for like the last 9 years. But the COVID time really got me thinking of how I can still get to the guys with a message in a video form, so they can like feel my words and not just see them. So that started it. And then, you realize that you're helping your players, but you end up helping a lot more people than you ever thought too. And that's why I kept it going for a while, where, I'm getting messages from, different countries that I'm helping on Instagram, and that's pretty cool to me. So that's kind of how it started, and that's kind of why it kept going.
And I think it's interesting, the fascination with just the COVID perspective, but then people are looking for those, and I feel, and I try to post things out there that has an impact on other people. But I think in today's day and age, not just COVID, but in everyday normal life, people are struggling, not from a 1 to 10, 10 being great, being a 0, but struggling with just the day and day things that they deal with, whether it's a parent, whether it's a college student, whether it's high school student, grandparent, whatever it is. And I think the ability to connect with someone and the ability to inspire someone, especially on something as simple as a social media platform. I think you obviously and people get comments and likes and shares and things, but the thing that I always say is you have no idea, I have no idea what message somebody hears because they don't like it or they don't make a comment, but it's the difference of them having a horrible day versus having an okay day, or even having a good day versus a really great day. So maybe a challenging question for you, but for any of our listeners or viewers out there that are watching or listening to this that maybe don't have a following like you do, but they want to have an impact or want to share things, but they feel that it's meaningless. Do you have anything that maybe you could share with them to kind of encourage them to go ahead and do it, with the sense that maybe they'll never know who sees it, but it might make that huge difference for one person?
Well, yeah, like for example, like I had some core beliefs that I always lived by, and I had discipline that I always believed in on my own as a coach years before I got Instagram. I started Instagram 2 years ago, or not even. And so be yourself, number one. If you're trying to mock someone else, it's probably going to fade pretty quick. But whatever it is that you want to do, or that you want to stand for and that you want to have on your name, stick to it. Because like I had no idea who Andy Frisella was when I got Instagram. I just didn't know him, and at one video that I posted, he put in his story, and all of a sudden I got 5,000 more followers. And then he had me on his podcast, and like, just, there's things that won't seem like they're going anywhere at first. And that can't be your reason why you're doing it. That, like, if you're going to post stuff, all you got to do is be consistent, because it's what you believe should be out there. It shouldn't be to have, hopefully someone picks it up, or hopefully someone big sees it. Like, if that's the only reason you're doing it, it's going to fade. But I just say, try to be genuine, try to be consistent, and don't get down on yourself if it's truly what you believe in. Because there's no point if it's truly who you are. Why would you ever get down?
I think that's fantastic advice, and it's something that I think people struggle with. I know I've struggled with, because you look at, especially if you start something new, the likes, the comments, the followers, and it's almost like that idea of keeping up with the Joneses, where you want to, okay, I see what Lew's doing, and be like, oh, I want to do that, or I want to have that. And I think so many people, again, going back to that perspective of social media, is they look at that end result, and they'll look, for example, at you and say, well, I can post good stuff like Lew posts. And I'm not saying somebody can or can't, but the reality is, like you said, you didn't start it on a Monday, and then on a Tuesday you were on Andy's show. You built it up, and different people share it, different people see it. But candidly, I think it's because you are extremely genuine with what you do, how you do it. And I think the reality is people see through some of the fluff. And I think a lot of people try to post and put things out there that they know will get likes, and maybe that's not who they are, what they really believe, but it's that validation of, okay, I got likes, or I got followers, or I got comments. Wanted to switch lanes for a second. With the new year among us now, so many people are into goals or setting resolutions, and I'm curious if you've been somebody that always sets goals, and if so, maybe you could share some with our listeners or our viewers to help them, maybe give them some insight in what you do when it comes to goal setting.
It's funny, but I've never really set too many goals. Now, I've been more determined certain years than others because of situations like what just happened to me, or, things like that keep me burning. But there's other things that I just feel like, why would I try to change much if what I'm doing is giving me complete happiness and peace daily? So, like, I love doing the players' workouts every day before they do them. I love trying to outwork these young whippersnappers still, and have fun with them and make their life more exciting. And I love giving them a message of the day. I love reading. I love listening to podcasts. I love being a dad and a husband and a friend and a boss and a leader. Like, I got stuff in my life that I can always get better at, and I'm never going to be perfect at. But to make certain goals for me, as long as I'm doing what I love on a daily basis, I don't have goals. I just want to keep live in that purpose.
You touched on the workout perspective on last episode, and I want to just touch on that for a second because I think it's really cool. So Lew does the workouts himself before he gives them to the guys. So I got to ask you, how did you start doing that? Did you always do that? And if not, what got you into doing that?
So when I was a assistant at Michigan or Mississippi State, I would always do hard workouts. Like I would always try to push myself, or maybe I'd try their one of their hardest lifts and then do some extra. But when I became a head guy, I made it a point. So since 2015 at North Texas, I was doing every player's workout, every run they've ever done, either the day before they did it or the morning before they got there. And so that's been my journey ever since. And then I'll have fun with them, like I'll be, when they come in and we got a test on something, sign the board if you beat Coach Lew. This past this past week, we had a 135 bench press rep max at the end of Friday. So I already crowned myself on the jumbotrons in the weight room the night before they got there, just to have, just to see if they would talk back to me or challenge me. But no, it's just like tweeting congrats to Georgia at halftime. I ended up winning. So, but I have fun with them. And that's the point. Like, well, if I can do it, you can do it. You're more talented than me, but why can't you? So it gives me a chance to really have fun with them too.
I think that's such a powerful perspective. It's having fun. And I think in today's day and age, so many people focus on that goal or objective or end result. And I'm not saying in any way that you shouldn't, but I truly believe, and I think COVID actually hurt a bunch of it in the sense that you can have fun while you're working your tail off, whether it's sports, business, whether it's in real life. And I think the transition before and during and even after COVID, I think a lot of people kind of fell away from some of that humor and having fun. And again, I'm not saying that you're not focused on what you have to do, but I think you can have fun along the way and still be effective and efficient and get the job done. And I think it's really neat how you tie that into with your players, because I follow you on social media and I think that you do make it fun, but you also make it encouraging that if I can do this, you can do it. And I think it's not me versus you, but it's, I think, more along the lines of, hey, if I can do this, why can't you? Maybe ultimately you can't, but go ahead and give it your best chance, because at the end of the day, going back to the first question, is that you emptied your tank. And if these guys know every day that they empty their tank, maybe some days they'll beat you, maybe some days they won't, but it's all about that effort, knowing that day you gave your best.
Well, it's also about coaching with your heart. Like, you do their workouts, yeah, you're going to coach it with more heart. You're going to feel it more. You're going to know when they're about to hit the wall. You're going to have so much more pride in what you wrote compared to just sticking to a program that you never do, but then like forcing them to do it and then getting on them that they can't do it. And you have no empathy for them. You have like zero understanding of how they're actually feeling. And I can't do that. I have a son. I have daughters. Like I'm not being that guy. So I'm going to know everything they're going through. I'm going to feel everything they felt, and then I'm going to coach it with everything I have.
And I think it's evident on the work you do with your players and the relationships that you have. You touched before on books for a second, and I think I was going to ask you this question, but curious if you've read anything recently or currently reading something that you'd like to recommend to our listeners or viewers.
One of my favorites this fall was The Twin Thieves by Steve Jones and Lucas Jaden. That was a great team book of culture, of just how it should be, how you should be as a coach, how you should think as a player, just coming together kind of stuff. And then there was also another one by this guy, Lucas Jaden, called Win in the Dark. I mean, that one got me like emotional, how the story of it, I just thought it was very, very helpful for me and very impactful. So I recommend that. And those are two books that maybe no one's heard of, but I recommend them highly. And those are the two I read this fall.
I love that you touched on those two, and I had no idea you were going to. Win in the Dark was one that I actually quoted in my last book, and I think the concept that I took from that and the perspective is, the hard work is the work that's seen, behind the scenes in the dark when people aren't looking, when there's no maybe other coaches, other teammates. And I think that's the value of going back to what you said from, I believe you said your father, the hard work pays off. Is it's the unseen hours. It's, yes, you win that game during the actual game. That's when it gets awarded or won. But it's the 2 days before that. It's the 3 lifts the prior week. It's what you do in the summer before, the season before. And I think it's really important how you do that. I didn't ask this last time, but wanted to get your answer in regards to the idea and the concept of either mentors or masterminds. Have you had mentors in your life that have played a significant role, either personally or professionally? And then have you ever been involved in a mastermind type of group?
My mentors are everything to me. I mean, I thank them so much that, I mean, they're probably annoyed with me, but yeah, as an intern, I learned under a guy who's now the head strength coach at Washington. As a GA and an assistant and an intern, I learned under the guy at Virginia and Mississippi State, who's now the head strength coach at Notre Dame. And then I had a great assistant role at Michigan, worked under a guy who went on to be the head strength coach for the New York Giants, and then Indiana, Aaron Wellman. So like those 3, and I also worked under a guy at Georgia Tech that helped me a lot in a different way. But I have so many resources that I still continue to stay in touch with and still thank almost on a monthly basis every year, because without them, I wouldn't learn anything. I wouldn't have safety nets to fall back on for advice or perspective. And they've really guided me through this whole journey, and it's been incredible having them.
I'm so glad you touched on that. And I want to say for our listeners and viewers, something that Lew just said. If you reverse engineer, he's a head coach now, but he just touched on assistant, intern, GA, graduate assistant. And I think so many people going back to that, what I've said a couple times is that social media idea of, seeing where somebody is today. And it's important to note that. But then for me, like I said, is I don't want to see what happened, at the game. I don't want to interview the player when he's holding up the trophy. I want to interview or talk to him 2 or 3 or 4 weeks before or after they lost their second or third game in a row. And I think for anybody listening or watching now, take what Lew said too, is not only has he put in the time and effort and energy, but he also has those mentors that he still stays in touch with. And I think that's the value of the idea and the concept of legacy. It's who are those people that have impacted you? How have you honored them, respected them? But then more importantly, how are you paying it forward? And people ask me often when I spend some time with them or doing any coaching, is like, well, how can I, pay you back? And I always say something that I'm sure you've probably said a bunch yourself, is just pay it forward to someone else. Some way, shape, or form, someone's going to need help or guidance or have some questions. The value and the opportunity to help them leads to them helping 5, 10, 20, 30 other people down the road.
That's right. And I have a bunch of guys that work for me now, and have had guys that have worked for me for the last 8 years, and I've been a head strength coach now for almost 9 years. And there's not one off season that begins where I don't text all those guys that helped me even get to this point. And I do think it's valuable too. You're not going to have many resources if you don't try to do a really good job for them, though. So I worked seriously. Like I was on a 1-day contract to just earn their respect. Like all I wanted was their respect. I didn't care if I was working for free. I didn't care if I was just a little GA. It didn't matter. I was just trying to do the best job I possibly could every day that no one would ever know about except them. And that's why, I just feel like that's necessary for people to understand. If you want a valuable or genuine reference one day, you really got to just, bite down and go to work and make their life easier so your life can be easier one day.
With that in mind, the people that you've helped and worked with and people have helped you, the jerseys behind you, are those all players that you've coached at some point over your career?
Yeah. they're starting to really send them now. So yeah, they're all players that I coached at different spots, being a head strength coach. So
that's awesome. So I don't think you remember. If you do, then you definitely get kudos. But I asked this question on the last podcast. I'm going to ask it again, and I'm curious if you have the same answer. But I know you know the famous Jim Rohn quote, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." If I could grant you dinner with any 5 people, dead or alive, who would you pick?
oh, oh man, all right, yeah, I'd probably go around the table again. So Barry Sanders, that's my hero my whole athletic career. I'm huge on leadership and motivation. Even though I've known him for a while, I would love to sit down with him again. David Goggins. I'd have to go with Tom Brady because of how much he commands respect on a football team. Floyd Mayweather on his mindset of he's never lost. I mean, every ounce of pressure he felt to never lose, and he never did. And then I think John Madden. I mean, John Madden would be amazing to talk to, just about the whole structure of an organization and just how he got that team going. So, and how he became what he did. So it changed a little bit. It
definitely changed a little bit. So I got to ask, have you read Goggins or finished Goggins' new book?
No, I haven't yet. I've just been in the transition mode and trying to get everything ready.
I'd love to get your 2 cents when you read it. It's a book I've actually read 3 times, and I've listened to the audio once just because I thought Can't Hurt Me was a phenomenal book, but this one just hit me differently with what he goes into some of those 240-mile races where, it's kind of like when you're on the treadmill. It's like, all right, if Goggins can run 240 miles, I can probably run for another minute or two.
Yeah.
So wanted to get your perspective on the word accountability. It's something that I talk about often. It's something that I think a lot of people put out there, but wanted to ask you if, in your own words, you could just share what accountability means to you.
So accountability has to be both ways. Like, if you want to be a player leader, you better hold yourself accountable, because if you don't, you have no right to hold anyone else accountable. And I think that's the whole truth of it. Like, self accountability is being somewhere on time, staying late, getting the treatment when you need treatment, taking notes when you have a notebook in your meeting room, sitting in the front 2 rows of class, and picking up trash that's not yours, keeping your locker clean, touching the line on the workouts, getting your hand behind the line, finishing through the line. Like, if you do that, if that is who you are, you have earned the right to hold someone else accountable. But until you do that, I don't want to hear you talking. That's just me personally. Like, leadership on teams, that's why it fails a lot, because guys think they can do that, but then live a certain way off the field where no one's going to listen to you. And I think that's it should be noted, because if you're not taking care of your stuff, don't hold anyone else to anything.
That's a great definition. I appreciate that. For our listeners that want to follow you or connect with you or find out more about you, what's the best way for them to do so?
Instagram at Lew Caralla. I try to post stuff in my story a lot that just helps people. Twitter at Lewis Caralla. Just, you'll see some tweets here and there that, might give you some perspective. And then, and just, my new school, man, Charlotte football. We're going to try to turn this thing around and write our own history. So I think that's pretty exciting.
Awesome. And I will say to our listeners and viewers, if you are not following Lew on Instagram or Twitter, definitely make sure you do so, because he puts out stuff on a daily basis, especially in his stories that just really are, as I said back to earlier in the conversation, impactful. And maybe it's that thing or that person needs that maybe you'll never know, but it's you've got some really good stuff. So I definitely encourage everybody to follow Lew. And then last question, same question I ask each time, is if you have any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners today.
Yeah, I just think no matter what happens to you, no matter if someone that didn't earn it got it, and you did not get what you thought you deserved, that doesn't mean it's the end. That doesn't mean it's over. Like, too many people, one of my favorite quotes, stop putting periods in your life where God only has a comma, because I'm telling you, there's been so many commas in my life that I had to realize later because I kept trying to put periods on it, or I kept trying to get down on myself like it was my fault or something. There's things that are out of your control that you will never understand. But the things that are in your control are how hard you work on a daily basis, how much you do things for the right reasons, and how much you care about others that are around you. And I feel like if you control those things, I think great things are going to come to your life.
I think that's a fantastic way to finish today's episode. So I truly appreciate you being back here again for the second time. And again, for our listeners and viewers, if you are not following Lew, make sure you do so. But I hope that you and I can connect again soon.
I always love being on your show, man. You do a great job. And thank you so much for reaching back out. It means a lot.
Thank you for listening to episode number 383. Lew is quite a guy, and if you are not following him on social media, you definitely should. A couple of months back, Lew released a book titled Firelighters 365. This book offers daily inspirational messages, and I personally have enjoyed reading this on a daily basis. In his parting words, Lew shared something that I think at times we all probably need to hear. Stop putting periods in your life where God only puts a comma. Keep going. You might not be where you want to be right now or who you want to be in life, but keep going. I challenge you to put your head down today and don't quit. Believe in yourself, and remember, we rise by lifting others up. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.